Greetings all, it's JD here from Studio 2105. Welcome back to MixStream Online and another episode of Weekly Update Wednesdays. As usual, I want to say a warm welcome to all the new viewers and a big thank you and a shout out to the patrons who help to support the channel financially. If you are not yet a subscriber, please do head on down and click on the subscribe button, and also don't forget to click on the bell so that you'll be notified every time I put out a brand new video. Do sign up for the email list as well, and if you want to become a patron, head on down to www.patreon.com/studio2105, or alternatively you can also buy me a coffee. Okay, links are gonna be down in the description below. Finally, the news that we have been waiting for. Okay, what am I talking about? If you haven't been living under a rock, or in BM we say the kata bawah tempurung, translated as literally as the frog underneath the coconut shell. Okay. The government has just announced the reopening of the creative sector. Okay, so this encompasses everything from studios, live entertainment, cinemas, theaters, obviously with a lot of the restrictions, with a lot of the SOPs in place. Now, I have a little bit of slight criticism about this, okay, because the thing is, before the announcement was made, there was actually some surveys going on by the Kementerian, by the ministry. So I actually got a call from a representative, so they were apparently doing some surveys on, okay, what are the new SOPs are gonna be and everything like. The actual official detailed document is not out yet, but I kind of took a glimpse and saw, a leaked version, okay, of the SOP document, and it apparently just looks like it was just copy and pasted from the one that they had early in the year and from 2020. It's like there's no change. And while that is fine, all fine and dandy, because all the protocols, the SOPs were pretty much already has been laid out by WHO. So those guidelines are already clear. But of course, the newest information that we have related to COVID is that it is very much an airborne transmissible virus. Okay, so I did not see any detailed information or requirements or updates that focused and talked about ventilation, the ventilation of venues, of studios, of theaters, and all that. All the rest of the stuff, such as 30%, 50% capacity, masking tests and all that, making sure that everyone is double vaccinated, fully vaccinated, all that. That's all good, that's all great. But there didn't seem to be any mention. Thing is, as you can see, studios by nature of the design are not going to be well ventilated places. First of all, we are very generally very airtight. That's a requirement if you want sound isolation, so you got to be airtight. So what we do to sort of mitigate the risks before and after sessions, we make sure we open our doors, we turn on the fans and open the windows outside and let as much air circulate as possible. But the other important thing is, I feel we need to emphasize, especially studios, we need to invest in a good air filter. Okay, you need to buy and get a separate air filter and install them. And fortunately for me, I already have one. I've been using an air filter, right, for as long as I can remember, being here in the studio. Now the reason is, I am actually an asthmatic, right? Asthma runs in my family, but fortunately when it got to me, I'm pretty mild, right? I almost never don't ever exhibit any symptoms of asthma, even though it runs in my family. And the long story behind it is because it's thanks to a lot of medication that I took when I was younger lah, when I was still a young boy. I've been using air filters inside the studio. There are many reasons, right? These are the air filters which you can buy. Make sure that these have, you know, the ionizers. They have the HEPA filters which are able to, you know, kill and eliminate viruses as well. Buy one which has got the appropriate airflow for the amount of floor space that you have within the studio. If you can get one for every single room, that will be great. In the meantime, I have got one which I use lah. Okay, it's been great for me because first thing, it really helps with things such as asthma, my sensitivity to things such as dust and smoke. It keeps the air a lot cleaner, a lot fresher, right? Reducing the amount of dust and, you know, contaminants is always a good thing, not only for the body, not only for your lungs, but it's also good for the gear, right? Your dust and stuff out from the gear, the microphone and all the other equipment. And it's just generally have, you know, it's better and healthier air that we're breathing in lah. So anyway, that's my little side discourse about what's been happening. Still, you gotta remember, everyone, right, to always be careful, stay safe, alright? You always have to still make sure you take care of those precautions, but take care of your health as well, right? Both physically and mentally and also spiritually. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into this week's topic, okay? With this week's question. Do you need extensive knowledge in outboard gear to be a successful mixing engineer? The short answer is no, okay? But if I just leave things at that, it will make this like the shortest video ever that I've ever made. Now, Eric Serafin, right, aka Mixer Man, in his book Zen and the Art of Mixing, okay, which I've got a copy here, right? He writes that gear used on a mix are tools that will make your life either easier or more difficult. They're not what makes a mix good and bad. For those of you who are interested, right, I highly recommend this book, Zen and the Art of Mixing. This book right here has probably been the most influential book that I've ever read when it comes down to mixing, when it comes down to anything audio related. I highly recommend reading this book and getting a copy of this. With the accessibility of, you know, the modern DAW software, plugins that range from those that are modeled after the classic analog hardware to the more modern ones, you know, that use AI, that use machine learning. Working ITB, right, in the box, you cannot deny it. It's here to stay as the predominant choice, right, of workflow for many people. Ultimately, knowing what sounds good and knowing how to achieve those sounds is the hardest part of mixing. This is actually something that Dave Pensado, right, described as acquisition of taste. Now, my wife is a brilliant self-taught cook, and she's got an incredible ability to pick out different flavors, different smells, right, of various ingredients, and knowing how much or how little to add, you know, to whatever she's preparing or whatever she's cooking. Sometimes when I see her mix different sauces, right, randomly, she'll just mix this and throw this stuff like that. She does it on the fly, by the way, doesn't rely on any recipes. It really amazes me when I see her doing that. So this kitchen analogy, right, it really made sense to me, right, because to an audio engineer, it's the same thing. You take this particular mic, you put it here, you put it there, and you combine using with this mic pre, and how much EQ, how much compression, how much of the effects you add, how long, things such as that. You know, I see the parallels, all right, in mixing. So this leads me to my next point, okay, that although one does not need to have extensive knowledge on how to operate analog gear, but a good understanding will open up a whole realm of possibilities. Now, through my audio training, right, both in college and also my practical studio work, I've been fortunate enough to have experienced both, right, the analog and also the digital approaches to recording and mixing. During the turn of the century, right, circa 2000, 99, 2000, 2001, that we saw a huge shift, okay, in the industry away from analog tape machines, right, and consoles towards, right, the DAW. Back then, Pro Tools, right, which was and still is the industry standard until to this day. It was during this transitional period where I personally experienced On one hand, you had the amazing advantages of what digital had to offer, but on the other hand, right, I recognize that some of the fundamental parts of the learning process, was being kind of neglected and omitted, right? Especially for the newer generation of audio engineers that are coming up. Now, these two big areas which I see, right, that we need to pay attention to are, right, signal flow and gain structure. Oh, they could talk about whole other video, whole other topic about that. Okay, it's something that you see folks arguing about all the time on all these online websites. To me, I think it's almost impossible to achieve a good working knowledge of analog gear without first understanding signal flow and gain structure. These are skills which will help in so many areas which are applicable, which can translate into ITB. Things such as what plugins to use, right? For example, again, a lot of plugins are modeled after classic analog hardware and how they work and how they sound. Signal flow, right? When to use groups, your inserts and aux-ends, things such as understanding complex processing methods, things such as parallel processing, saturation, side chaining, 3D series of effects. These things are a lot easier to demonstrate and describe in real life using analog equipment. Okay, that's my argument. Now, as I mentioned, right, these concepts, right, signal flow, gain structure, I consider it to be basic stuff. Unfortunately, they don't translate well when you try to teach them, you try to learn them on a computer, right, in digital world of computer screens and the graphic user interface, the GUI. Now, another disadvantage which may come as a surprise to many is speed of workflow. It is actually, and again, personal experience here, it's actually slower to mix with a mouse and a keyboard compared to mixing on an analog console. Trust me, when you want to set up, when you want to get a mix done on an analog console, it is so much faster when you literally are flying around with your hands with your fingers on the faders. I don't know why. I think there have been discussions about this many times, okay, right, over the past 2 decades or so already. Because of this, right, the tactile response, right, the actual physical response, right, and the feedback that your brain gets helps arriving at mixed decisions faster, right? Because first of all, you are forced to really rely and concentrate on your ears and not look at the screens, right? Or your motor functions are not busy trying to coordinate what you see, with the meters and what you see in your hand movements, okay? So your brain, right, and your ears can process the sound that you are hearing, what you are hearing, and translate it to mixed decisions that you perform. There's another one more disadvantage, there's one thing which I really miss, is that it's a lot harder, it's not impossible, it's a lot harder to explore, right, creative processing, right, techniques. What I mean by this, for example, very simple example. Now, on an actual compressor, let's say in 1176, okay, right, try playing with the threshold, the ratio, adjusting your attack and release in real time in response to audio that is coming through it. It's something that you can't do or you cannot replicate and do easily on a plugin. Nothing I can think of is like when you play around with, say for example, you have some kind of audio, right, some sound that's coming through this particular fader, and then you want to send it to some effect, right? And you want to do some creative thing, like you want to fade it out but still have that effect there. For example, the reverb. You do that by you sending the aux-end to a pre-fader, right? To pre-fader mode. These things are a lot harder to recreate. First of all, you need to have a good imagination. You need to have a healthy dose of imagination, because you have to imagine, okay, what kind of sound, what the thing you want to achieve. And then you are going to have to combine several, if not many different automation moves. You either need to draw it in or you have to write in the automation, and then having to adjust the parameter, right, until it sounds right. Because of this back and forth thing that you have to do, right, with your mouse or something like that, there's no way of knowing that you've got it right until you play back and listen back to it, which is already after the fact. On an analog console, if you set it up that way, it's just play, tweak, voila, you got it already. So much faster when it just involves pushing and twisting knobs and faders. Now there are some tools which you don't have to recreate the analog style workflow, and what do I mean by that? Things such as control surface, hybrid digital mixers, right? Nowadays, the one that's really sexy and fancy, right? Those multi-touch screen devices such as the Slate Raven. Now, but these are fairly expensive investments, okay, and honestly, it's not a top priority for a home studio or someone who works mobile, right, on the go. In conclusion, again, I do not want to sound like a boomer, though I am kind of getting into that category, right, of age already. It's not necessary. It's not necessarily vital to have an extensive knowledge of analog gear and how to operate them in order to be a good mixer. But there are so many areas, right, and many other skills that you should definitely focus on and enhance and build up in order to make up for it. Now, but having said that, the saying goes once again, knowledge is power, okay? Having the extra information and the extra knowledge will always be an advantage. Going that extra mile, right, in knowing how to operate these gear will definitely help you when you get to digital, when you get to in the box, okay? So yeah, there you have it, okay? That's my answer. That's my take on this topic. What do you think, okay? Do you really need to know your analog gear in order to be a good mixing engineer? I'd love to hear your comments and your thoughts on that. Please leave them down in the comments below. So that's all for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching once again. All right, if you found this video useful and informative, please do leave a like, do share, and if you have not become a subscriber, please become one. Do so, click on the subscribe button. And if you want to support the channel, head on down to the Patreon website, www.patreon.com/studio2105. Till next time, I'll see you again in another video real soon. Happy recording and mixing. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. Peace, love, and music.